All right, welcome back to the Learn English with Mike podcast. Today we are talking about surprise expressions. So we're going to go ahead and jump on into our first expression that we like to use in English. I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of the vocabulary and kind of why it is an important expression, or maybe why it's popular and why it um, gains traction, as we like to say. So basically, to give you a brief explanation of the first one, the theme is rolling, right? So in English, we, especially in the United States, the culture of the automobile and vehicles is very prominent, and it's a very important kind of theme in our lives, right? We drive everywhere, and it's just, I think a lot of pride in the United States historically has been the automobile industry. So we have some expressions that are kind of related to driving or rolling, right? And so the word roll is basically the wheels on a car, they roll on the ground. Obviously, the word has a lot of different meanings. It can be a noun for like a piece of bread, like a dinner roll. It can also be an object that you use to flatten dough. So there's multiple meanings to the word roll, but we're going to focus on how it is used in expressions. And yeah, one of the expressions is "that's how I roll." So "that's how I roll" is simply like a phrase that we use to talk about that's kind of how I do things, right? And we'll say it with a negative too, like, "oh, that's not how I roll." It's kind of like, that's not how I do things. That's not really for me. So, for example, somebody might say like, "oh, hey, you know, you don't need to." You don't need to say, like at work, they might say, "oh, you don't need to really know much about this person or say hi to that person because they're not very important." And you might say, "well, that's not how I roll. I like to know everybody by name and call them by their name. So that's not how I roll." It's like, that's not how I like to do things. And then another one we have with rolling is slow your roll. And this one is more common, I think, with younger people. And it could just be kind of talking about like, um, slowing down a little bit, right? My boss used to say this a lot. They'd be like, "whoa, slow your roll a little bit," when you would ask them a question that they hadn't got to yet, or they weren't ready for, or maybe is a little bit too further down the line for them. So they might say, "oh, slow your roll a little bit there, buddy." It's like, just slow down. Got to slow your roll a little bit. So that is another one. And then we also will say, "let's roll." "Let's roll" is just going to be a phrase. It's like, let's get out of here. Let's roll. Let's move, right? So come on, let's roll. You might hear that in if you're training at the gym and your coach is trying to get you motivated. They might say, "come on, let's roll. Let's go, let's go." It's kind of another way of saying let's go. So let's say, "let's roll. Let's do this. Are you ready to roll?" People say that too. Like, "are you ready to go? You ready to roll?" "Yeah, I'm ready to roll. Let's roll out of here." So it's all kind of related to your wheels rolling down the road, right? So those are popular ones. We also have another one where we talk about being on a roll, right? So a classic example of this, if someone's telling a lot of funny jokes, you might say, "wow, you're on a roll." Or if someone's answering all the right answers in their English class, And I say, oh, your teacher might say, you're on a roll today. It's like you're on a streak. You're performing consecutively very well. And they're saying you're on a roll. It's like you are continually doing well. So that is the phrase, you are on a roll. And a similar phrase, it sounds similar, but it's actually something different, is honor. Honor roll. So honor roll is what we talk about when you get good grades. It's like a B average, because we give grades in the United States A, B, C, D, and F. So if your average is like a B plus, which converts into a numerical thing, it's pretty complicated, but converts into a numerical thing, and it's going to be honor roll is what we call that. It's above a 3.5 grade point average. It might be a little bit difficult to understand without really living in that situation, because it's fairly abstract the way the whole thing works. They might do it like that in your part of the world where you live, but I don't know. I've always kind of confused students trying to explain this to them, this concept of honor roll. So basically, when somebody's on honor roll, it's like when you're a student and you are getting above a 3.5 grade point average, which basically means a B plus grade point average, then you are on honor roll. Probably, unless you're coming to the United States and going to high school or college, you probably won't really encounter this much, but it's very popular on bumper stickers. Parents like to brag about how well their child is doing, and they'll have a bumper sticker sometimes that goes on the bumper of your car, so the part that kind of protects the frame of the car if you're in an accident. We call that the bumper. And they will have a bumper sticker that says, my child is on the honor roll at such and such school, or proud parent of an honor roll student. So you may encounter this phrase. You might also encounter it if you watch TV shows that are focused on people in high school or college. Typically, that is the most applicable situations. But that word is honor, spelled Honor, honor roll. So it's like it's an honor that you've achieved this, right? As opposed to the other phrase that I was talking about, to be on a roll. On a roll is when you are performing very well and consecutively performing well. You can say you're on a roll, like when you answer all the questions right in your English class. Your teacher may say, wow, you're on a roll, good job. And I'll be honest, when I was growing up and I heard the two phrases, I had trouble distinguishing between the sounds because it sounded very similar, and the idea, I guess, is kind of similar, right? If you're doing well in school and performing well consecutively, you could be on a roll. And maybe that is why they decided to call it honor roll, because it sounds the same. I don't know. But anyway, that is another popular expression. And we'll also use roll in another phrase where we'll say you want to just roll with it, right? To roll with something is kind of like going with the flow. So when you say, oh, let's just roll with this, it's like saying, let's just kind of go with this and see what happens. Just roll with it, If maybe you go to a party and you're not very comfortable with the scene or something, somebody might tell you, hey, just roll with it. Or maybe there's something that bothers you at work, and instead of speaking up and expressing your opinion that you're not you're not really enthusiastic about something, somebody might say, hey, let's just roll with it. Just roll with it right now. Don't, cause any problems. Don't speak up. Just roll with it. So that is what it means when we say to roll with it. So those are some popular roll phrases. So that's a very useful word in English when you're talking about speaking like a native and using phrases that we often use. The word roll really gets applied in a lot of colloquial phrases. And of course, that changes as time goes on. So you might not hear that as much anymore. I feel like, every generation has a new kind of thematic vocabulary that they'll use, and you can already see it with a lot of words that people who are younger use that might be unfamiliar to people in my age group or people in their 30s. I'm in my 30s, or people who are older than me. So all of that really depends on your age, but it's important to know it, especially, I'm not that old where it's like going to be back, really outdated. It's still pretty relevant, and I still hear people use these phrases and talk like this. So it's not quite, historic and ancient yet. Anyway, hopefully it's not. I don't know. I get older and older by the day. But anyway, so those are some good roll phrases that you can use, and it's a good word to just be comfortable with, because you'll also see a lot of people make kind of jokes playing on the word, because words that have multiple meanings in English, we'll typically make jokes about them, right? Or we'll use them to make a joke because they can have two different meanings. So somebody might, make a joke with the word, interpreting it with another meaning, and, kind of playing on, we call it playing on the word, or a play on words. And so it's good to know these like really key words that people use a lot to formulate phrases and concepts, right? So the idea of rolling is kind of being in motion, really. So if you think about it like that, it might help you understand some of the slang, and some of the ways that we just express ourselves, right? You think of a wheel rolling as kind of something that just kind of continues and can go on and on for a long time rolling. So that's kind of the concept we try to capture with it. Anyway, so that is going to be the podcast for right now. I hope you enjoyed this little explanation and that you feel a little more confident using this word roll.